Hi there, this is Favi Martinez, and what you see on my screen is 2 lines using this motif pattern. I'm working in Digitizer MBX version 5. Now I'm here to create this little video because we have a person in our group who is trying to use a blanket stitch to in a digitizing project that she is creating. And she's using MBX version 4.5, and apparently in version 4.5 there is not a category designated for blanket stitches like what we have in this version of MBX version 5. She tells me that the blanket stitch is simply one of the motifs that's available inside of the embroidery gallery for motif stitches. And the problem is that she is creating this blanket stitch and she wants the little fingers to go in the opposite direction. Now, in this particular program, not only do we have a whole blanket stitch category in which we can make lots of changes to a blanket stitch, but we also have an ability to change the orientation of it. In the standard version, if I were to draw a line here, I'm going to digitize an open line, and I'm just going to go from left to right, and I'm using the standard, and I'm going to hit my enter button, and there is the blanket stitch in the standard version. If I were to create that same sort of a line using the inverse, and I draw my line, you're going to see that my little fingers go in the opposite direction. These are the little fingers that I'm referring to. Okay, so in the program that she is using, and because the blanket stitch is only in the motif category, not in its own separate category, she was having difficulty trying to figure out a way to make the little fingers go in the opposite direction. So this is what my demonstration that you see right here is all about. This first line I drew using this motif pattern right here. It is an open line, and I just drew it from left to right. I'll do it once again so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so there it is, just a duplication of this one right here. If I wanted, how did I create this one here? Well, if I wanted the scallops to go in the opposite direction, all I did was I digitized this line from right to left. I drew it, and my scallops have flipped in the opposite direction from what these first ones were. So when you're creating an open line using your digitized toolbox, using the motif fill, simply choosing what direction to digitize that line in is going to change the orientation of it. And I believe that that ought to also stand for using a blanket stitch within that motif category. Let's get a little bit more complicated here though, because these motifs can sometimes act a little bit differently. In this program, we also have the ability to create closed shapes, either at rectangles or squares, or circles and ovals. So this is the way we do it with the rectangle and square tool. We select it, and if we want it to be an equilateral rectangle, or in other words, we want it to be an actual square, we're going to hold down our control key, and we're going to drag from left to right. And you can see that I'm creating a square. When I hit my enter key, oops, I let go too soon. You can see that my little scallops are facing with the hearts going toward the outside and the scallop edges toward the inside. If I go in the opposite direction, however, so I'm starting on the upper right and I'm dragging toward the left, you can see that that has flipped. Let me get this out of the way and we can set it side by side. So this was the first one that I did, going from left to right. This is the one that I did going from right to left. And you can see that it has flipped the motif. So that's a pretty handy tool to have. Let's look at it with the circle and oval tool and see what we get here. So the way we draw circles and ovals in version 5 and in 5.5 is that we draw a line for how wide we want our circle to be, and then we drag a line for how tall we want it to be. We click and we hit enter, and there we have our circle. And you can see that this time the motif has been created and the little hearts are pointing toward the inside of the circle. So following the same principle, dragging in a particular direction first, in this case we went out toward the right first and then we went toward the bottom, we got this configuration with our motif. what would happen if I went in the opposite direction? All right, this time let's go toward the left. All right, and let's go toward the bottom. Let's see if we see anything different. Nope, no difference. What about if we make another circle and this time we try to go from right to left and middle out toward the top? Will that make a difference? No, it did not. So curiously enough, the circle tool is acting differently than the rectangle square tool did. All right, so what about I'm making a circle and I really, really want those motifs to go outward instead of inward. How can I make that happen? This is one way we can do it. Again, we just stay with our circle oval tool, but instead of selecting our motif pattern, let's go for a single run. And let's draw a circle. And this time I'm going toward the right and toward the bottom. And I'm simply making a single run line right there. All right, I'm going to now select that line and I'm going to turn it into a motif to see what we get. We get the same thing that we had when we were creating all of these other circles. I'm going to undo what I just did. This time, this is the little trick that I am kind of referring to what this video is all about. We have created a single run line, and I'm now going to use this mirror image tool, and it's the vertical mirror image, and I'm just going to flip it. You don't see any difference on the screen. But if I now select my motif, you're going to see that it has flipped that pattern to the outside. All right, so that is what this video is all about. If we play with the way that, in the case of a straight line, if we draw from left to right, we're going to get it in a certain orientation. If we draw our straight line or any other line that's open from right to left, it's going to flip in the opposite direction. When we're using that rectangle square shape tool, same sort of principle applies. If we drag out toward the right, we're going to get this configuration. If we drag toward the left as we're creating that square or rectangle, we're going to get a mirror image of it. To duplicate that in the circle, because the circle wasn't allowing us to do that very same thing, remember all I did is I drew this as a single run line. I'm going to undo it until I get it back. Just a regular single run line from right, dragging out toward the right. Use the mirror tool and then turn it into a motif to get that opposite thing happening there. So let's just duplicate that again. And there we have it. I assume, I'm hoping I'm right because I don't have a version 4.5 to experiment with, but I'm assuming that this principle should also apply for that blanket stitch, because that blanket stitch in 4.5 is simply one of the motif patterns. So all of this to say, you know, just play around with the different direction that you draw your lines or draw your circles or squares, and hopefully you are going to find that you're going to get some different results. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope that it was helpful, and I sure do hope that this little trick of using that little mirror image tool actually works for you to get the right effect you want for the blanket stitch in the motif category. All right, thanks for watching. Fabi Martinez. Bye for now.